So we're done drafting our front and our back. And I'm sure you're wondering, how are we going to cut out this thing? How are we going to cut out the pocket bags, the slit, and all those things? You may be wondering. Let me clear the confusion for you. So we're going to be using our tracing paper, and we'll use the tracing paper to trace out the pocket bag, our skirt, our front, our back. That would include our slit. So you're going to be using your tracing paper to do this. So let's start. Let's begin tracing out our pattern pieces. So we're going to start with our front. And it's on these pattern pieces that we are also going to add our seam allowances. Our seam allowances. Seam allowances. We're going to label our pattern pieces. We're going to add our grain lines. We're going to include our notches. All these things we are going to do on our pattern pieces. So starting with our front pattern piece, start tracing it out. You see why you need a tracing paper, because it's transparent. You can see through your pattern at the bottom, your pattern paper at the bottom. I've traced out my front. So what I want to do right now is I want to draw the grain line. So our front will be on the fold. So I want to indicate that this would be on the fold. So what I'm going to do is draw it in. This is how you indicate a fold. This is how you show a fold for your grain line. So this would show that your front will be cut on a fold, and we're going to cut only one piece of this. So front, cut one self. So one self meaning one, the main fabric that you are going to be working with, you're going to cut one of it. Cut one self. And on this pattern piece, I've indicated my notches. So I indicated my dart opening. I indicated my notches there. I transferred my hip notch over here. I also transferred the zip notches. So the zipper notch. So remember, I came down by 2 inches. This I made it a notch there, and then the pocket opening is 6.5 inches, another notch. So when we are sewing it together, we'll place both notches together. That would help me to know that this is where my pocket opening is. That's why I put those notches there, and my hip notch is here, like I mentioned, as well as my dart notch. So the next thing I want to add is to add seam allowances. Because this center front is going to be on fold, I am not going to add any seam allowance there. So we're good on the side. For the hem, I'm going to add 1.5 inch hem allowance. So I'll just take my ruler down. Draw that in quickly. Pay attention to make sure your tracing paper doesn't move while you're tracing out your pattern pieces. Okay, so I've added 1.5 inch hem allowance at this top here. I need seam allowance here. I need seam allowance because I'm going to be sewing my waistband. I'm going to be attaching my waistband to the top. So we can use between 1/2 inch and 3/8 of an inch. But I would like to use 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to mark 1/2 inch around quickly, and then we'll join. Okay, so I'm going to transfer my notches to that seam allowance I just did. My dart notches. Transfer those. On the side seam, I would like to use 1 inch seam allowance, 1 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to add 1 inch seam allowance on the side. Then after doing that, I'm going to transfer all the notches from this side to this side to the seam allowances, transferring all the notches. So transferred on all our notches, and so we're done with our front pattern pieces. I still need to trace out the pocket bag, but we're done with our front pattern piece. We're done with our front. We've added all our pattern. We've added our seam allowances. We've added our notches. We've labeled. We've added our grain line. So our front pattern piece is good to go. The next thing I want to do is that I want to trace out our pocket bag. So we're going to trace out our pocket bag. You need to hold this down so nothing is moving. Then we'll trace it out. So trace out your pocket bag. Okay, so I've traced out our pocket bag. We've traced out our pocket bag already. What I need to do now is we need to add our notches, our grain line, and also label. So let me start with our notches. So the first notch is the one on this side, the one that we came down by 2 inches. So that's the first notch. The next notch is the one that is the pocket opening 6.5. That's the next notch. Then we're going to put in our grain line. The grain line is going to be parallel to your center front. It's going to be parallel to your center front. So this is my pocket bag. My pattern paper keeps moving. So parallel to your center front. This is our center front here. What I'm just going to do is going to move my ruler like this. Hopefully this works. Okay, do that to make sure you're able to see, and then draw in my grain line to show the direction I want my pattern piece or my paper, the direction I want my fabric to be cut on. So that's your grain line. And then we're going to label this. This is going to be our pocket bag, and pocket bag, pocket self. So we're going to be cutting 4 of these because we need the main pocket, the pocket bag on both sides. So that will be 4 in total. So you name it pocket, cut for self. The self, like I said, is the main fabric. Or if you don't want to cut all the 4 pieces on the self, you can cut 2 on the self and 2 on lining. So in that instance, you say cut 2 self and 2 lining. Okay, so we've labeled, we've added our notches, we've added our grain line. The next thing is to add our seam allowances. First seam allowance we're going to be adding is, let me just move this over here. The first seam allowance we're going to be adding is at the top here. You know, this is a waistline, and we added we added 1/2 inch on our front. So 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch. You know what? I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch all around this bag, So let's do that. So we've traced out our pocket bag, and this is what it looks like. added all the seam allowance, half an inch seam allowance all around. We've added our labeling, we've added our grain lines, and we've added our notches. So that's our pocket bag pattern piece. Keep that aside, and then we go to trace our back. We're going to be tracing our back piece now. So we're tracing our back piece now. So start drawing. Trace out the entire thing, including the zipper extension and the slit extension. Then we'll transfer our notches, our hip notches, and our dart notches. You draw out your dart as well. Okay, so we're done tracing out our back piece, and I've transferred my notches over there. I'm going to transfer my zip notch. Yeah. So the zip notch is where we started extending our zipper from. So 1 inch. So this is our main center back, and then we extended by 1 inch. So we're going to put our notch on the main center back. So we traced out our slit, we went down. We've done that. We're going to add our grain line. We're going to add our grain line, grain line, make it straight. I want to do the grain line 2 inches away from the center back. So, so So I did the grain line 2 inches away from the center back. Then, of course, this will not be cut on fold. So when you're not cutting on fold, this is what the grain line looks like. So I'm going to label it back, cut back, cut to self, cut to self. Because we're not cutting this on fold, so this would be 2 pattern pieces. So after doing that, the next thing, okay, I did not transfer my hip notch. Let me just quickly transfer that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our seam allowances. M allowance is 1.5 inch. So let's quickly do that. One and a half. Side seam is 1 inch. Waistline is half an inch. We're not going to be adding seam allowance on the zip, because when you sew your zip, you're already folding the extension in by 1 inch. So we don't need to add any seam allowance on this side. So we've added our seam allowance on our waistline and on our side seam. We've marked our notches, we've labeled, we've added our grain line, and our back pattern piece is good and ready to go. So I'm going to be showing you, let me show you what we've done so far. That is our back, this is our pocket bag, and this is our front. This is our front. So we're good to go. All we just need to do is to cut out all we've done, cut everything out, and we'll be ready to place our pattern pieces on our material or your fabric. Cut it out. I'm going to show you how to place your pattern pieces on your fabric the right way, and then from there we're going to sew this skirt. We're going to be sewing this skirt. So I will see you in our other video where I'm going to be showing you how to place the pattern piece on your fabric and cutting it out, and then we'll sew it together. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new in this video. Don't forget to drop your comments or your questions in the description box below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the other videos. Happy sewing.